So my screen is rapidly filling up here. I think we're going to go to an overflow screen here in a moment. Josh is on, that's good. Quarterly meeting, we should have more people on. Katie, how's Debbie doing?
She's doing well. They finally let her out of the hospital on Friday morning. So she is staying with a friend in DC for the next few weeks, and they're going to take care of each other and make sure that Debbie doesn't move too quickly. Yeah. But if anyone has ways to keep her busy, send them her way.
Well, so give her our best wishes. That's the main thing.
Will.
So instrumental in everything that happened this last several years. So we're thinking about her.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let her know.
Let's see, we got any new people on? I see one of my students on there. Is your video you work on your phone? Well, a couple of them actually. Maybe. You know, you go away for a few weeks, you forget who's who. Yeah, it looks like we're stabilized here. I'll go ahead and get the meeting started. So welcome everyone. This meeting is being recorded and it's public and will be posted on YouTube. So if you don't want what you say to be, what you're thinking to be well known, don't say it. And if there's a reason you don't want your face to be shown, just turn off your camera. So this is a quarterly meeting, which means typically we have more EGLE and AG people on the screen, and maybe more elected officials too. So we have too many people to go through introductions. So I just ask that the people, when they first get on the screen, to introduce themselves. And we need kind of to know if somebody new is on, so we can update the attendance record. Beth and I were just talking about that earlier, about how important it is to see who's been here at meetings and who hasn't. And if somebody weighs in the public and they've only been at one or two meetings, that might mean that their information might be taken with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of details that we go over in these meetings. So I'm Roger Rail. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Scio and co-founder of Scio for Safe Water, which is a 501c3 nonprofit formed in 1995. It grew out of a series of citizen meetings, some official, back when there was a DNR. And some of the CARD grew out of a intergovernmental partnership committee that was set up to respond to certain government actions back in the 90s. The problem with the IPC was it only responded when there was an issue, get ahead of the problem. So we, in 2005 and 2006, we finally formed CARD to have regular meetings and keep all the interested parties, all the stakeholders, public and citizen stakeholders, government entity stakeholders, on the same page about what's going on with the government situation. And of course, this is an ongoing issue. we're trying to get CARD set up so it can continue on, have sustainability for as long as it needs to be, which for dioxane means many, many decades. Probably longer than any of us are going to be alive. So we always have to keep that in the back of our mind that dioxane is going to be around even if we're not. So how do we set up the infrastructure so that the new public is brought up to date and stays on top of the situation? New consultants come in, how do you get them up to speed so they can do their one-off consultant study and have it be, how should I say, making sure that they have considered all the bells and whistles and all the aspects of it. So that's kind of been my goal ever since I became, even before I became chair, is to get this entity sustainable. It's still a challenge. We have no funding. The funding for the Google Drive and things like that is actually provided by the SRSW nonprofit because we don't have a funding mechanism for CARD. CARD is not an authority like a transportation authority or anything like that. We can't levy our own taxes. We have to rely on the kindness of local governments and nonprofits to sustain this. The volunteers have been largely, the volunteers have been very important in this effort. A lot of the people you see on the screen are volunteers. I've been working on this for going on 28 years. This summer will be I'll be starting in September. I'll be starting my 29th year if I'm still doing this. So I want everybody to be thinking about how can you in your organization work to make sure we have an entity that CARD or whatever replaces it if EPA comes in is going to be sustainable for as long as the dioxane is there. So with that, let's get on with the meeting. And again, welcome everyone. So Beth, do you want to take over on the approval of the minutes?
Hi, I'm Beth Collins. I'm the CARD secretary, and the next item is the approval of the May minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those, or are there any changes? Vince?
A motion to approve.
Anyone support?
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Beth.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Okay, now it's time to go over these old business action items. It says 60 minutes, but it sure would be nice to get through this in, I don't know, 30. So, I mean, we all have other things we could be doing today. I was talking earlier about lost opportunity costs for meetings that where the same old happens. And so Dan, please go through this as quickly as you can. And if somebody has any comments or something, please wait till the end and we could jump back based on the letter codes. I think that will make it more productive.
Okay,
So
Roger,
go ahead.
we'll attempt to go through as quickly as I can. The old business item, action item A, will the Attorney General release the consent judgment technical data? That is still covered under the confidentiality agreement. So we won't be able to release that yet. That confidentiality agreement has to be lifted by the judge. Again, as I've stated before, the interveners negotiating teams have seen the data, just as Eagle has as part of, and Gelman as part of the negotiations. B is the status of the trend analysis. As I've stated before, we will finalize the draft trend analysis, our review after the direction of response activity requirements are identified and finalized by the court. We will see where we're going in response activities. We are going to use the trend analysis to assist in developing monitoring plans, and that step isn't here yet. We have to get what the response activities will be required by the court currently, or a signed fourth amended CJ. The next one is the compliance wells that were approved for abandoned in September 2019 on the Scioview development property. As I've stated previously, we haven't just gone out and replaced those wells, compliance monitoring wells. We are going to replace, install and identify compliance monitoring wells under the fourth amended CJ after new wells are installed and sampled for the first time. Will be all the wells, monitoring wells in the western area will be evaluated, and the specific wells will be identified as compliance monitoring wells to monitor to the new 7.2 drinking water criteria. Again, they will be identified after completion of the installation of new wells and evaluated after the first sampling event. The next thing, when will Eagle, Washtenaw County sample the Allen Creek drain? The next sampling of the Allen Creek drain will be completed by Gelman as part of the MS4 investigation. We are working on approval of the Allen Creek drain work plan submitted by Gelman. Once that is, once the comments are given back by Eagle and Washtenaw County, then that work plan will be implemented, and that's under that. That's when additional sampling of the Allen Creek drain at the locations identified in the work plan will begin. One of the bullet also was asking, is there going to be new locations identified, specifically like the Mack School or Scio Township locations, and other locations right now, other than what's identified in the work plan, are not proposed to be sampled under the Gelman, work plan, other current work plan. As far as the Mack School, as I've stated before, Jenny Kahn and I went out there and did a site visit to see if we could confirm seeps and wet locations as were described in previous CARD meetings. We did not see any, and so there is no, currently there is not other locations at the Mack School that we are proposing to sample. There was a question about toxicology evaluation or evaluation of children risk related to, at the Mack School, related to contaminated seeping groundwater. Again, there was no seeps identified, so there's currently no specific exposure risks identified. I have talked with the Eagle RRD toxicology group and discussed the stakeholders, CARD's concerns about contaminated groundwater seeps and exposure by school children. And if, a potential exposure pathway is confirmed, we can do, a site-specific evaluation for school children. School children can be completed as relating to the specific seep or specific exposure pathway. The E is what is the recent monitoring and extraction well work update on Wagner and Maple Road. I think, as I said last time, the Gelman has been conducting extraction well redevelopment and rehabilitation activities. They're basically acid washing and surging their extraction wells at all the locations, or they are going to do all the locations on the western and eastern area, the extraction wells. This is a normal and required operation and maintenance activity. It's nothing new or nothing special. You know, and is identified in the Gelman O&M manuals, and has been done in the past. I have requested that after these tasks are completed, that they send me an email summary report so I can have that on the record, and I will bring that information to the CARD group when that is finalized. The next one is the update on the city of, update on the MS4 violation. Again, as I said, Gelman submitted an Allen Creek drain monitoring work plan. It has being reviewed from EGLE, WRD and RRD, and the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner. EGLE is preparing a response that we will submit to Evan as a water resources commissioner. We had hoped to have that done here last week or beginning of this week, and that's checking on that status from our WRD team, that they are still working for that submittal to Evan of our response or evaluation of the work plan. And then in turn, Evan will submit a response back to Gelman with the reviews and comments related to that work plan. And once that is done, then any changes to the work plan will be made or identified, and then Gelman will start the activities identified in the work plan. So that's currently the status of those activities. Let's see. I don't have, Roger, there's a new bullet there that just came on, the Environmental Commission resolution. I don't have any information on that. So if someone wants to take that.
I just added that. I don't know if we want to discuss it now or at the end of the old business where we usually have discussion. There was just one taken to the Environmental Commission last week that I think Evan was there. So I'm not sure what, I think it was going to be worked on and tabled. And I know we have Kathy Griswold and Rita Mitchell with us, and Dan Bicknell. Who has their hand up? Rita?
Hi, I'm Rita Mitchell. I'm on the Environmental Commission, and I did bring a resolution to the Environmental Commission asking for a notice to come from City Council. Since we're an advisory group to City Council, I asked that a notice be taken by City Council and sent to the state. It did not, we discussed, but we did not take any action on it, I'm sorry to say. There was some discussion and I think some disagreement on the plan or yeah, just different takes on the plan as submitted. And so that is a concern. So it is still outstanding. I'm happy to bring it back, and I just haven't done it yet. So it's possible next month.
Thank you, Rita. And then Patty was the next topic. I'm not sure if she was with us. She had another conference call she had to be on.
Oh, Beth.
I'm on.
Oh, hi, Patty. Yes, who's asking? I can't see face.
This is Dan Bicknell.
Dan.
Yeah, just before we leave item F, GEA had a chance to review the Gelman proposal. And, you know, Dan, when Eagle takes a look at it, I think it would be wise to require that Gelman install the shallow groundwater monitoring wells, irrespective of, you know, what the concentration may be inside the pipe. So for the areas where they see the infiltration in the Allen Creek drain, on the outside, they should install permanent monitoring wells to understand what is actually going into that drain. Because as you might remember, the way the MS4 permit works is that anything that goes into the drain, not within the drain, but into the drain is the compliance point. The other suggestion is please review the criteria which Gilman is using, which is a water quality based criteria. The permit actually says that an illicit discharge is anything above uncontaminated groundwater. So we know that the dioxane is contamination. Therefore, what should be required is that Gilman stop any infiltration of that dioxane into the pipe. And that report was provided to EGLE as well as a number of elected officials and CARD members. So I would ask please that you take a look at those two things, including the requirement for them to install monitoring wells along the Allen Creek drain where the infiltration is occurring, and that their criteria not be water quality based, but be what is legally required, which is not allowing dioxane above background levels to go into the Allen Creek drain.
And
Thank you.
I can confirm that we did receive your email with your comments and suggestions. That is being put into the comments from Water Resources Division, and I believe it will be in the final response back to Gelman from Evan and the Water Resources Commissioner. So as far as installing monitoring points outside the monitoring wells outside, I know, Evan, we have talked about and have identified to Gelman informally that is going to be a requirement, and we will be doing that as a group, or if they don't follow through with installation based upon evaluation of their initial sampling within the pipe. So we have received yours and taken your comments into account for our further review.
Thank
Councilmember
you.
Griswold, you had your hand raised and you have a
Yes,
pretty,
just for a
pretty
further,
background. Where are you?
well, the sun isn't quite up yet here, Lake Tahoe. So it's Pacific time. I'll be leaving back in Ann Arbor later tonight. I just want to let the group know that there will be a resolution on the council agenda. At least I plan to submit one. And I have already asked that our legal team provide a response, because I know that there is a difference between what Dan Bicknell has specified and what was in the plan from Gelman, as well as, well, Dan can probably explain this better, but we were not all totally in agreement on some of the criteria. And I feel that our Ann Arbor legal team needs to clarify that, and hopefully we'll have a resolution in support of our Washtenaw County Drain Commissioner. So, thank you.
The next item is item G, which is Patty's.
Yep. Thanks, Dan.
Patty's information.
Yep, this is Patty McCall with Tetra Tech. We have not had any requests for sampling in the wet basements. I did reach out to all the folks that are on the list in the last 6 weeks, just to make sure there's been no changes. And then the second comment there is, when will the public see the study done on the impact, the NIPTs on First Sister Lake? And I don't know the answer to that. The last that I knew, it was still under the confidentiality. So I actually don't know if that's going to be released or when it's going to be released. So that's something I can ask Brian when I speak with him next.
Jim Schultz, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. The VI testing, is that vapor? What's the
Vapor
VI testing?
intrusion. I think we were still requesting that the city take that on also at some point, not just the water from rain, coming in sump pumps, but
Right. So how do you go about getting the testing done? I've been asking about this for years and have not gotten any response. So how do we go about doing that?
Roger, do you want to answer that one, or Vince, or Patty, or any? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's an issue with vapor intrusion in the west side of Ann Arbor, possibly in Scio Township as well, where we have some shallow groundwater that may be contaminated. I'm concerned that we're delaying more testing as in the west side of the city. The numbers have gone up regularly after each attempt to analyze that. I think we need to expedite tests done in West Park and around West Park, Chapin Street, 8th Street, and try and get a handle on, what the trend is. It looks like if you saw a map and a graph, you'd see a sharp rise in the vapor or the groundwater. I'm concerned that we may have some basements that are being contaminated. There isn't enough analysis being done. I don't know if we can wait for EPA to get involved. I think we should have Eagle and Danaher, Gelman, investigating this expeditiously. I think the comments about Mack School are concerning because there could be contamination in the basements of Mack School. I don't know if that's been evaluated recently or not. I have not seen seeps at Mack School either. I've gone up there probably every week for the last couple of months. There have been reports that there are regular seeps at that site over the years. We had a resident who's got kids at Mack School who made comment to that effect, and Jeff Hayner on City Council has also had kids at Mack School and has said that he's normally seen seeps up there as well. So I think we need to make sure that the residents are not being exposed. Eagle has analyzed Bob Bailey's, Dr. Bob Bailey's evaluation of vapor intrusion potential. And they came back with a report saying 100 part per billion could actually be a valid number given some assumptions. And we're at 49 at the West Park, 49 part per billion, and hasn't been tested recently. So we don't know what it's at right now. So I think we need to expedite these tests. I think this is a near-term issue that we should not be delayed on. And if Gelman doesn't want to do it, Eagle could do it and charge Gelman, whatever. I think we don't want to just wait forever to get follow-up tests on this. This is something that Eagle did not initiate. This is something that the CARD group and the Elms Creek group initiated. And I'm glad that it's being done. But I hate to see these delays drag on. We should have a more, like Dan Bicknell has suggested, we need to have a more meaningful analysis and plan to keep track of this and act on it if we need to. Thanks.
Jenny, and then Jim.
I just wanted to try to answer Jim's question. There is no procedure for sampling for vapor intrusion for dioxane. So if we get to that point, it's going to be kind of a new thing. And that's why they're testing basements right now, the city of Ann Arbor, because the chemical properties of dioxane make it want to stay in the groundwater and not come out of the groundwater into the air. So the concern isn't necessarily vapor coming from below ground and getting in the homes. It's that water coming in and then the water with the dioxane in it evaporating. So that's why they're testing, the city is testing sump pumps of homes with water in the basement. And then to Vince's point that no one has looked into Mack School, I mentioned at a previous couple of CARD meetings, we have done a review of Mack School, found groundwater to be about 20 feet to 25 feet below ground at that school. And I've also reached out to the school district, and they have informed me that there is no water inside that school, that it does not have a wet basement. But again, we're happy to, if you do identify some seeps, to look into it further and to keep an eye on that. But I just wanted to make it clear that we have looked into it. It's not being ignored.
Yeah, I want to make a comment that the city, the CARD group and the Outskirt group has complained about the plan to do basement testing. It's too far west. It's not in a very wet part of the community. We needed to have these tests done on the more easterly part. CARD and the Outskirt group was not advised or reached out to make suggestions, and that's what we would have said. So I have to question, and others have in the CARD group have questioned this plan that is not effective in our opinion and should have been modified and has not, and it seems to be a waste of money in my opinion. It's too far west at this point. Farther down the road, we may want to do testing to the west. But currently, we know we have very wet areas to the east of West Park and West Park, and those were not considered meaningful places to test, which beyond my understanding. So, we should change those test parameters, should contact the CARD group and the Outskirt group as to what we would suggest in the future. I just disappointed that we're spending this money and time on these tests that are not effective.
Jim.
You want to say something?
Yes, my personal issue on this is I have two grandsons who live on Delwood. There are two well monitors in their front yard. And I've asked for years about vapor testing in their basement. And I'm still want to find out who's going to pay for vapor testing. Is the city going to pay for it? Is Eagle going to pay for it? Is Gelman going to pay for it? But I'm concerned about my grandkids and their life. And they live on Delwood, right off of Dexter. So what can we do about this? Mr. Hamel?
Are they here in this curve area, or are they farther north?
They're right here in the red area, right there.
Right there, huh?
Right there, yep.
Yeah, well, they're not on a well.
Did it
anymore.
have a wet basement?
No, that's
They don't have a
the
wet basement,
dioxane is
but what about
very
the,
far below ground there. But there, there are some high concentrations 100 feet down and 135 feet down that are still going up in spite of the purging that's going on right down here. I mean, this is a concern that this dioxane is going to end up someplace, but it is quite a ways, quite far below ground there. Even people there that have gardens, they don't have to worry unless their roots of their plants are 100 feet deep. Then, but we don't.
They should have shallow
there's
testing
areas
done there.
There's areas we need to worry about vapor intrusion, and there's areas that we don't. I just want to say that in all my research over the years, I only found one reference to dioxane in water vapor, and that was at a transfer pump location at some site that was dealing with dioxane. And they found that there were concerned levels of dioxane in the water vapor at the pumping building. And if that can happen in a sealed pumping building, then I would be concerned about what's going to happen in people's wet basements. And if we look at where the wet basements are likely to occur, this area here that has been identified at 10 or 20 surface down to about 10 or 20 feet. On that side and over here, we don't have that well defined, but I'll mention it later in this meeting where Eagle has pointed out that this area over here in Scio Township may have a similar concern to this area over here near West Park. These are the areas that we need to concentrate on. In my opinion, Mack School is not in the high concentration area. We need to worry about the high concentration areas first. But here's the dilemma. Even if we find that there's a problem with dioxin in people's basements, are people going to want to have their basements sampled if nothing is going to be done about it? We won't be able to get the data if people don't think that anything's going to happen, even if we have the data, because they've seen what happens at this site. They've seen the slow responses. They've seen the inability of Eagle and DQ and the DNR to force this company to do a proper cleanup. We've seen the inability of concerned stakeholders to transfer information to the attorneys who are in these secret negotiations. Even the elected people on the screen here have acknowledged that they don't know all of what's going on in court. Thank goodness we had a couple of Zoom sessions, especially one while I was gone, where you can kind of see the level of sophistication that goes on in court. And we're led to believe that the decision makers have read all of the materials, even though all the materials don't have everything there is to make a decision. So how are you going to get the data when people don't want to put their home values at risk? How are you going to make sure that if there's a problem, that there's a promise to get it cleaned up so we can get that data? So that's enough of my rant on this subject. That I'll let somebody else talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. Appreciate it.
Well, the next couple were for Brian Steglitz. I still don't know about the Honey Creek Huron River sampling. We were gonna try to ask the attorneys in Ann Arbor. I thought if maybe they knew why it's not in the correct location. And then I had a resident ask me about the settlement with the Northwest Supply Well. So I was just gonna ask Brian that, but he's not with us, so. We could go on to the court update. And I think Kathy Knoll, you wanted to start first, please?
I can do that. You asked me to just give a general overview on what happened recently with the court hearing. It was last Thursday, May 27th, and the hearing was to determine the wording of the order that would eventually be entered by the court. Gelman and the interveners and Eagle were disputing the wording, mostly Gelman and the interveners. So I will tell you what happened from my perspective. The interveners argued that this wasn't a final order, that we didn't object to be called interveners. Gelman was quibbling with the wording, whether we were intervening plaintiffs or interveners. And then there was discussion about the purpose of the quarterly reviews. The interveners maintained that the purpose was to keep a check on the parties along the way, and that they were not merely a settlement conference, as some had argued. I think Eagle's position was generally that they were looking for certainty in the full provisions of the Fourth Amended CJ. And Brian can add more later if he wants to. So Judge Connors ruled in favor of the interveners. He agreed with the wording on their proposed order. So the order states that This is not a final order. So Gelman, this means that Gelman does not have an appeal by right to the Court of Appeals. Instead, they have to apply for leave to appeal, which makes it a more complicated process. Gelman is supposed to immediately implement all activities outlined under the 4th amended CJ. The quarterly hearings in front of Judge Connors are to review the progress of the response activities and consider the implementation of additional response activities. The intervening plaintiffs retain their status as interveners, and the 4th amended CJ is attached to the order and incorporated by reference. The stipulated order and the draft settlement agreement previously proposed by Gelman is not included in any of this. And this does not in any way impact the EPA process. The EPA process will continue to go forward. There was some confusion regarding what Judge Connors said at the hearing on May 3rd. And some interpreted the judge's words to mean that all of the 4th amended CJ was to be included in the order, and some interpreted the words to mean only the parts that were agreed upon by the parties were to be included in the order. The judge did make conflicting statements during the hearing, but now he has clarified and said that he intended for all of the 4th amended CJ to be included in the order. That's my opinion. That's how I construed what happened. We may hear some differing points of view from others. That's basically it. This is the general overview. I don't know if the order has been entered yet. I did not think it had been entered last week, but it may be, and it may be entered today. I'm not positive. Others can chime in with their perspectives or opinions.
Mike has his hand up.
I had a question. I haven't seen the final order. I would certainly object if this is called a consent judgment. I mean, you can refer to it as including what was previously in the proposed consent judgment number 4, but there's no consent to it. The judge didn't even have a full hearing on this matter and just ordered the implementation, including the expansion of the prohibition zone, about which there was no discussion whatsoever. And I would hope that the interveners would consider whether they want to take an appeal from some of these issues or wait and see what Gelman does and perhaps take a cross appeal. But at any rate, that's my comment. There was no consent, so I hope that if the attorneys sign it on behalf of the interveners, they'll be agreeing as to form only. I mean, that is what the judge said. It's just not consent. So it ought to be agreement to form as opposed to content.
Thanks, Mike. Mike made a very important point there about the interveners may have to counter contest this. This reminds me of what happened back in the contested case when there was a permit that was favorable to the citizenry, and Gelman, at the end of a 90-day comment period, the last week of it, contested the permit. And the only entity that could act swiftly enough to counter contest it was SRSW, actually citizens of SRSW. Later on, when the contested case got expanded, the city and the county had time to come in and provide the extra support. But this time, having gone through that, the local units, the interveners, had better be ready to counter contest this. if it goes off the rails.
Or they
So I
want to
think
go,
that, thanks, Mike, for pointing it out.
and where the First Sister Lake's involved too, like, is it, anyway, we'll talk about that under NPDS permit. Ralph, you have your hand up?
Yes, I heard Kathy's comment, and I had spoken to her about this earlier on the weekend. And that's one perspective. I have a different perspective, as she indicated there might be. I see this as and this is going to be controversial, and I'll try to be as polite as I can, but I don't think that the judge's actual ruling was embodied in the order that is being entered here. And I base that comment on the end of the hearing transcript, pages 135 and 136, where Roger gave a very articulate and coherent point that this order should not be entered with the poison pills, is the word that Roger used and I used and several others used at that hearing. And yet the lawyers for the interveners went ahead and proposed an order which was 180 degrees opposite of what their clients had resolved in formal resolutions, in some cases unanimously. This is mind-boggling to me, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in my whole legal career, where the lawyers for a party proposed an order that was the opposite of what the client's instructions were, based on a court ruling which was at best ambiguous, and I would say it wasn't ambiguous. If I just reread the transcript this morning, and after Roger's comments, which were that we should only implement the parts of the CJ that were agreed on by everyone, the judge said, "That is exactly what I ruled." I'm quoting verbatim from the transcript. And to not, at a minimum, ask the judge to clarify it and just propose an order, which is not what the judge actually said, is mind-boggling to me. And I would like to hear an explanation in detail by the lawyers who did that, how they weren't potentially not complying with their professional obligations. I know that's controversial and it's harsh, but I can't see any other way to read what happened here. That order is effectively negating thousands of people hours of work by CARD members and elected officials and Debbie Dingell and the EPA and everybody else involved in this, and to essentially go back to, we're going to do exactly the order with the poison pills, which enable Gelman to walk after those wells go down to 500 parts per billion, and will enable Gelman to probably never even enable the Park Lake well, or if they did, to destroy the wetlands. It's inconceivable to me that you wouldn't have taken this to the judge and say, "Judge, which way are we supposed to go here? Are we doing the CJ as a complete thing, or are we picking and choosing only what, you've said two different things." It could have been done very politely. "Judge, we'd like to get it right. We want to make sure that we're proposing an order that is your actual intent." That wasn't done here. I discussed this with a friend of mine who I think is the preeminent trial lawyer in the Midwest. He was shocked when I described this to him. And I really don't, we're now right back to where we were last August, with the exception of, thank God, we managed to get this into the EPA, because this process is not what any of us and any of our elected officials said should happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if now we'll have further attempts to derail the EPA. And I don't trust anyone at this point. I don't trust our own lawyers. And to be with all due respect, given the position that Eagle's taken on the consent judgment and trying to put that in place despite all the flaws in it, I don't trust them either. And I would take, and I know that there's people on this call that will not agree with this comment, but my comment would be, this is just like Flint. This is where the activists propose one thing and the government officials go the opposite way. And that wasn't acceptable then, and it's not acceptable now. Thanks. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ralph. Mike?
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Ralph. I just want to interject that I agree with a lot of what Ralph said. I don't think the judge really knows what he ordered. And if he signs it, he may have to, pull it back in some way. Can anyone file an amicus brief on this to better inform the judge about what he's not being told by the various lawyers?
Well, let me just comment here. I hope nobody takes my comments as being adverse to what Ralph was saying, because I agree completely. The only thing, in fact, that was the basis of my saying there was no consent to this. There was no hearing on this. And that's why I would hope the interveners would consider appealing or cross-appealing this decision. The only thing that can be said is that in the second hearing, the one on the entry of the order, I haven't seen the transcript of it, but it was my memory, Ralph, that essentially the judge said, no, I want it all included. It's not what he said at the hearing, where everybody on the 20, whatever, not on the 27th, he said, I think he said he wanted it all included, but it was clearly not what was said in any of the pages you were bringing forward, or the entirety of that hearing, which is why I think that it is as reprehensible as you do, for that matter. Enough said, I think.
I want to follow up on that one comment. And I heard the hearing where the order was discussed too. And I recall generally what you said. I think though that the follow-up point I wanted to make is that hearing was obviously influenced by what was presented, and what was presented should not have been presented in the first place.
I agree completely.
And that's, to say, well, the judge ultimately ordered that. Well, yeah, that's because you put it in front of them and without saying that, without referring to the prior transcript or the ambiguities or the point that he himself made. The normal course of activity there would have been to say, Judge, at the end of the hearing, you said you were going to eliminate, that you ruled that you were going to take out or have the interveners take out what they didn't agree to. And you just remind the judge of what he said previously in a respectful way. That was not even attempted here.
Oh, I agree with that as well.
Yep.
Jack?
So I want to agree with what Ralph has said, but I want to emphasize something, which is all of the briefing that was submitted to the judge before he ruled on the order argued about things like the title of the order and whether it was a final order, but neither party raised the issue of whether or not the judge had ordered the inclusion of the entire proposed fourth CJ. That argument was not made to the judge, and I don't believe that the judge actually considered that argument when he ordered attaching the entire fourth CJ. No one asked him to make that decision. And this is consistent with the conduct of the interveners' attorneys in the past. They are reluctantly, at best, representing the point of view of their clients. And, as a lawyer, I find that reprehensible that they didn't go back to their clients and discuss the content of this order with them and get direction. Rather, they once again worked in a manner that undermines what each one of the governmental interveners had done, which was to reject the proposed consent judgment. This is part of a pattern of conduct by these attorneys that offends me, both as an attorney and as a person concerned about the plume. I find it inexcusable that at every turn, these attorneys try to circumvent the will of their client. And this perpetuates it. I don't think that there's anything that the interveners can do because they failed to raise these issues before the judge went in this last hearing. So we can't appeal our own failure to raise issues. And I don't know that we as citizens have any standing to try to intervene and remind the judge of what he actually ordered. So I'm really disappointed in this. And as others have mentioned, I just expect that we in the future will see an attempt to derail the EPA process as well. There's an agenda here that's being served that isn't that of this group or the intervening governmental units.
Thanks, Jack.
I had a question. Is this an issue where everybody expects this case to be appealed? So what's happening now may not be as important as what happens in the appeal?
No, I don't agree with that. I know you're just posing it as an open question, but based on what Jack just said, I would tend to agree with that. If you propose the order, you really can't appeal it when the judge enters it. Okay. I mean, if you don't raise an argument and you propose an order that has the whole CJ in it and the judge enters it, and then you say, oh, we want to do something different, the Court of Appeal is going to look at you and say, this was your proposal. You changed your mind, too bad. That's generally what happens. So I view this as a dead, pretty much. I mean, you could, it's possible, but the odds of success I would view as very, very low. And with our current set of lawyers, they're not going to do it anyway.
Wasn't the assumption that Gelman would appeal?
Yeah.
Well, if Gelman appeals, then even the, then nothing happens.
So
if they win, nothing happens, which may be better. I don't know. Maybe they'll not appeal because this order got in, or maybe they're all just, doing a lot of dancing for posturing purposes, but they aren't actually going to do it. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I would hazard a very strong opinion that our current set of lawyers will do nothing to get rid of the fourth consent judgment ever, based on what we've seen.
So if I may, put differently, if Gelman files an appeal, it's an appeal by leave, which means the court has to permit it. If they permit the appeal, the Court of Appeals will be deciding whether to accept that order or reject it. So the best case scenario in the Court of Appeals is that the Court of Appeals upholds the judge, which is the entry of the fourth consent judgment. That's our victory is that it won't go to the Court of Appeals and have a result where we get more than get better than the fourth amended consent judgment. It will either be that or something much worse. And so the appeal isn't something for us to hang our hat on. That's not going to help us in any fashion.
How much have we spent on this already?
My guess would be the trial prep and briefings up to this point, probably somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 collectively amongst the intervener outside counsel.
Ralph, they've spent over $1 million collectively since.
No,
the
I'm
start.
just talking about this particular piece of it.
Thank you.
I'm talking about, from when the judge ordered the trial to occur back in November. I agree that the total numbers over the longer period of time are a lot higher than that.
That's
I'm just
taxpayer
talking
money.
about
too.
direct trial prep for this. It's very sad.
Well, like you say, it would be good if the government entities ask their lawyers what happened and why and hold them accountable. I think Debbie Dingle warned us about this, that, the local governments need to get control of their lawyers. So we were warned. Unfortunately,
yeah, even
here's where we are today.
Even the state lawyers have been problematic, in my opinion. Eagles lawyers, state of Michigan lawyers, have not really backed the citizenry like they should.
Which transitions us to the next topic is, Dan, will you talk a little? I mean, we just have to get, I think, the EPA here as soon as possible, and that's our only hope now.
Mhm. Well, as we all know from the last meeting, the designation process to have the Gelman site as a National Priorities List Superfund site began again with the state of Michigan's concurrence letter to US EPA. The most recent things are that US EPA has identified a community involvement coordinator. Her name is Diane Russell, and she's the one that would be receiving comments from the public and working with Maria Munoz, who's the NPL coordinator, and Michael Burkhoff, who's the assigned Region 5 project manager. US EPA has a Gelman website, and if there's any updates, it will be on the US EPA Gelman webpage, not necessarily just the EGLE Gelman webpage, which Dan Hamel takes care of. I talked with them about the concept of additional work during their site investigation, site inspection. And they indicated that really they're going to probably collect and split with Gelman and EGLE maybe 24, 25 samples. So they don't anticipate, as part of this NPL designation process, installing a lot of additional wells, if any, and dealing with other things than making sure that exposure pathways are well understood. But we can suggest to them additional sampling, but the feedback that I received from them is that we should probably be best off working with the state. And I reminded them that we've been working with the state many, many years on these questions. So that's kind of the 7 Mile High view and update on the site designation process. Again, as things come further and things are looked at, it would be on the web page that's come up there that you're looking at now.
Roger, you're muted.
When you share, then the mute controls go away. I was going to say the SRSW webpage has see SRSW. Boom. Share that. It has the city's take on the hearing, and then it has this news about the homepage that EPA set up. So pretty much I try to keep this up to date about anything. Here's all the various stakeholder sites and breaking news, and I still try to keep SRSW up to speed here on all the things related to the Gelman site. I do have to have some help because This is a Google site, and by September 1st, this has to be converted to the new Google sites, which is going to take some amount of doing. Maybe I'll tap some of the students who are interested in this to help out with this. I need somebody with a fresh perspective to help with the transition, but anybody else on the screen that's willing to help with that. It kind of relates to the whole thing of why isn't there a card version of this, which was my intent when I first took over as chair of CARD, was to have everything handled by CARD. But of course, we have no funding. We don't have staff. We don't have, we rely on volunteers. We don't, so right now it's kind of a hybrid situation where SRSW is providing a lot of this information to have a structure maybe for CARD, and there's a information structure that we try to get all the various stakeholders to participate in, but that hasn't happened. Getting arms around this problem over the years is not trivial. The lawyers certainly don't have all the answers. The elected officials come and go. Staff comes and goes. There's only a couple of us on the screen who have been involved in this for as I don't know if there's anybody been involved as long as I have on the screen. What's going to happen when there's no continuity on this? We've already seen this is what happens in this last set of court hearings. Imagine that going on for another few decades. You think it's complicated now. This is not any way to handle a magnitude cleanup like this. It's not an ordinary situation. We can't use 20th century thinking to take care of what's going to be a 22nd century problem. I don't know how to do this anymore. I just there's no entity. If we don't get the EPA, I'm hoping the EPA can handle us. This is what they do. A problem of this scale is what they're used to. And if we have local unit, if we have local people that are fighting this, if we have regulators who don't want the EPA in because that makes more work for them, this problem is going to become a Flint type problem. The solutions that some of the analyses that were done were all city centric, worrying about, well, can it get to Barton Pond? We've already seen in the last couple of years that there's more township wells contaminated. Multiply that by decades or centuries, think of how many more township wells are going to be getting contaminated on the way to Barton Pond. There's an urgency here that I have that doesn't seem to permeate throughout this group. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to. I've tried. I've tried to pull together the data. We can't even get data that everybody admits that the interveners have the data, but they can't tell the public about it. What the hell? Who made that a rule? That's what Gelman wanted to do way back in the early days when there was a key person at the DNR, Denise Grubin, I think her name was, because Gelman said, well, we don't need to make this data public, do we? She said, oh no, we're going to make it public. We're going to send out monthly reports to these 5 repository locations, the city, the county, the township, the public library, 2 citizens for representatives. And that's how we know as much as we know about this site, is because some key person made a decision back in the day. And right now we're throwing all that away because we can't even get the confidentiality agreement released. So there's data, we know the data probably about the soil system and maybe some other sampling that's been going on at the core that the public has not seen. So how's the public going to weigh in and tell the elected officials what's going on? You know, here's some information. The public is always we've always had people in the public have more time than what staff has. The staff on the screen can't possibly know everything that the public knows without some kind of organization. And if there's being data withheld and kept secret, we end up with situations like what just happened with this court, where there wasn't enough push on the lawyers. So we've heard enough. We're just going to go with what we think is right. The people that tell us what to do, be damned. This is no way to run something like this. They're thinking, well, there's only a small chance that something will get spread. We've already seen that there's dioxin spreading. And if sampling we're back to using homeowner wells as de facto monitoring wells. It has to hit a homeowner well before we start adding more monitoring in that area. Instead of finding where's the high concentrations, how did it get there, and where is it going? If you don't have enough sampling to answer those questions reliably, and if you look at, I'm going to be talking about this later about the modeling. If the modeling doesn't explain how you got to this point, the modeling's not complete. Anyway, that's my number 2 rant for the day. There'll probably be another one before this is over.
That was a good one, Roger. We have a few hands up. Mike Moran, then Josh Mosier, and Vince Crusoe.
In response to Dan's statement that EPA probably wants us to work with the state, it seems like it would be appropriate at this point to try to pull together an explanation of what happened in the CJ4 and all our continuing. And again, I urge all of us, and me included, it just slips out consent judgment. This was no damn consent judgment. This most recent interim order needs to be explained to the EPA that in trying to work with the state, interveners filed these claims, CARD made these claims, that essentially the judge ignored them, and that we ended up with an order implementing a lot of things that everybody objected to and is counterproductive to resolving the problems on this site. I hope maybe they would pay attention to something like that. It's a little looser than giving them a list of locations where we want wells, but it's what we really need at this point in time.
Josh, and then Vince, or?
Yeah, hi everybody, Josh Busher. I just wanted to supplement Mr. Ricknell's status on the EPA Superfund listing. So we've been in contact with the site assessment group, and they are working to get a contractor on board right now. And so their next step would be to get that contractor on board. The next step is site inspection. They already did their preliminary assessment, obviously, and came up with a hazard ranking score. So as Dan said, they would be looking to identify some data gaps to support that preliminary score. And that's what the site assessment or site inspection process does, is just to verify that those conditions exist and move it on. So that's where we're at right now. I just want to let everybody know that the EPA is working to get a contractor on board to do that next step. That's it.
Vince?
Yes, thanks so much. I just wanted to recap on this old business before we move on. That it's been 8 months since we've tested near surface groundwater, shallow groundwater, in the West Park area. I think that's way, way too long, way too delayed. Gelman wants it delayed. We want to get data. And I think that collecting this data will help us get EPA involvement much sooner if they see Scio Township, Ann Arbor potentially being exposed through vapor intrusion or other means, worker involvement in trenches, potential exposure, Mack School basement could, become a location where we get water that's contaminated. I think we need to make sure that we keep applying pressure here and collect this data, because that is going to be a significant piece of information that EPA is going to look at very seriously. The child exposure needs to be evaluated. We are looking at much lower exposure rates for children than we do with adults. So where these schools are involved, we have Slauson Middle School, very close to exposure potential. I would say Mack School, with seeps coming out of the hillsides on a regular basis in past years, is also of concern of me and some others, especially some of the parents. So I think we need to, apply pressure to get these tests done and not wait for Gelman. We could charge Gelman and do the tests ourselves. Thanks.
I just note that this whole discussion was set for 60 minutes. We're now at 75 minutes, and probably we need to focus on some of the other issues we got here and left for the updates.
Thanks, Mike. Roger, I think you're muted again.
Let's move on. I also I lost connection there for a moment. Did anybody else notice a blip in time?
Not me.
Yeah, hopefully the cloud recording worked all right. All right, so let's go back to Dan and get through these 3 items here on item 4, and I'll keep mine kind of short right after that. So go ahead, Dan.
The update, the NPDES permit, that's the permit for discharge from their treatment system. I have no new information. They're still evaluating, so we're still acting under the old permit. I don't have any information. And as far as the Beth, looks like you've added and First Sister Lake. I'm a little confused there. There is no permit, and permit application for First Sister Lake. I mean, has not been submitted. It was identified as a potential for discharge for the Park Lake extraction well in the 4th amended CJ, the draft, and the order, as Mike identified, is really in order now. So a request or an NPDES permit request has not been submitted. So there's really no update. I mean,
Who submits that, Dan?
well, it would be the permittee, the person that wants to discharge groundwater. So in this particular case, it would be, Gelman asking for that permit to discharge treated groundwater from their system related to the Park Lake well, extraction well, which is a new well that is proposed to be installed.
Okay, well, I will take that off of there, but you'll let us know if you see anything coming over your desk on that, right? Or someone in Eagle will?
Absolutely. Plus you will also, it would go into the, I will make sure if that comes up with Water Resources, an NPDES permit request, I will bring that to you for sure.
And I'm already requesting a public hearing or whatever, public comment period, whatever that is, the 30-day.
Right, and that is already, you've already requested it, and Water Resources did identify that they will have that related to the, what you have down there for Honey Creek.
Right, but
Related to their discharge, the current NPDES renewal process. So they're going to have a public comment period for that as soon as it's completed internally and moves forward from WRD. And
I'm talking about if a first sister lake comes up.
you can ask for that, and I'm sure they will.
We're asking now for it. Thank you. Just keep that in your mind.
Okay, as long as people realize there's no permit request.
No, but they don't come to the meetings, so we're never going to know unless you tell us.
Okay, yeah, I promise I will make sure that the CARD is aware of any permits requested by Gelman related to the Gelman site.
Thank you, Dan.
Under what's new, I just an update. There's the existing. I talked about it last time. The existing extraction well TW19 along Maple Road was compromised or basically collapsed. Got sand and gravel in the screen failed, and so Gelman is going to replace that well. They're finalizing access agreement with Bixmore Property Group, which owns the mall there where the TW19 is. So they're going to move it. So they're getting an access agreement to move the well in that area. The first step will be a test boring. They will do a test boring using rotosonic drilling techniques. Will be completed, and that will go down to Bedrock. They will do vertical profiling of groundwater as they drill that test boring. They will also sample sands and gravels of potential water-bearing aquifer material for physical property analysis, including gradation analysis, sieve analysis, and hydrometer analysis. This will be used to properly size a well screen to make to identify the best well screen size for the most efficient extraction of contaminated groundwater.
Hey, Dan, can we get them to test down the Bedrock? We've had real trouble getting Gelman to do that in the past. If this is going down the Bedrock, I think it'd be great if we could get a sample down near the Bedrock.
Well, that's what the current plan is. Again, that is their installation. They are going to go down and down to rotosonic down to Bedrock and do vertical profiling as of water bearing zones that they encounter down to Bedrock. So I will check on that, make sure that is still the process once they start that test boring. That test boring will take a couple of days to complete because they're not only getting geologic material, a full with rotosonic, you get a full all the geology going down, but they'll have to stop and take samples of the water bearing zones.
Yeah, they've been really reluctant to do that test down at the Bedrock, so that'd be great if they do that. Thanks.
And that again, that is really all I have for what's new, unless anybody has any questions. Jenny can give you a little update on what the 2021 residential well sampling activities, that the current status.
Washtenaw County was able to collect 110 out of 121 samples in April and May. 4 of those 110 had detections, all on Elizabeth Road and all in properties with previous detections. So we didn't have any new detections, and Breezewood Court is still non-detect since the initial detection in 2019. And this sampling, besides the Elizabeth Road and the properties along Jackson that we do once and twice every year, it also included the greater West Delhi area in Breezewood Court, and then also West Liberty area, a little bit farther south.
The individual results letters went out. Jenny sends those out directly to the properties, to the homeowners, to the addresses. I will update. I've started compiling the list to update the the access database for the residential wells. So it takes me, it's a work in progress. I get data and I update as it goes. But I hope to have that done before the end of the summer. And then I will also post the analytical in a summary, a residential well summary page before the end of the summer. Once we get all the samples in, and that they will be posted related to an address.
And Bicknell?
Yeah, Jenny, on those Elizabeth wells that came up positive, is there any increase from last time that was sampled, please?
I'm sorry, Dan, you cut out. I didn't catch what you said.
Yeah, sorry. On the Elizabeth Road wells that you sampled, there were 4 positives. Did they increase in dioxin concentration over the last sampling, please?
One did. One went from 1 part per billion to 2 parts per billion. Yep.
Thank you.
That's all I have as far as updates, unless people have any questions.
All right. Let's see, I'm unmuted. So I'm gonna start from where the 2 Dans and Jenny left off. It so happens that one of those wells that got the 2 parts per billion that had been 1 part per billion on Elizabeth is on the north side of Elizabeth. This turns out is the only well that I can plot from the Gelman database and show where it actually is. It's the only one that has the XY to show where the property is in the Gelman database. Now, it turns out the other wells exist, and I could turn those on. And the other thing that's interesting about it is that we actually have depth and surface elevation and other information about some of these wells. Now, how did I get that? I got that from Kevin Lund's early rock works. He actually filled in that data as part of his Rockworks project that you saw I guess the culmination of when the results of that work was released April 30th, just before the court hearing, as part of his expert report. But when we got the export of that data a couple of years ago, when he was first starting to do it, he wasn't able to export the name of the well. I had to go in and fill in this by hand. What is wrong with the DEQ and inability to handle data in a way that people handle data instantly nowadays? Why does it take so long to get sampling data into a data structure and shared with all the stakeholders? Why does it take so long? Because they're still doing things the old way. I will tell you that there is a company in Michigan that does electronic sampling using pads, with technology that's secure, multi-factor authentication, where they can enter the data at the test site and within moments generate reports from it. That technology exists. But do we have it on this site? Which would be wonderful, because here we have the largest dioxane site of its type in the country, which the company even acknowledges and said, well, we have won awards for doing the most, the cleanup on the biggest environmental site in the country. Yet they're still using last century technology to report it. I think Jeff Hayner's on this now. If I haven't got my full screen up here, but he made a good point at a recent meeting where he said his take on reading some of the submittal documents for the court hearing. The Eagles report was that it took a long time to clean up the data and get it in a form that can be used for analysis. Well, welcome to my world. It's the thing that's really missing from my standpoint on this whole settlement thing. It wasn't addressed at all in any of the intervener reports and things, is to have modern data gathering, reporting, analysis techniques. And not just for a one-shot deal like what happened with the latest Eagle expert report, but to have that on an ongoing basis. Now, appears that maybe that started, but when I asked for, as soon as I saw that report, I said, well, please show us the data that went into that report, into that expert report for Kevin Lund's report. What were the data inputs, and what was the resulting data after it was cleaned up and massaged? Because I want to compare that with what I have to do in order to generate these kind of reports on Google Earth and Tableau Public and the other tools that I use. Ideally, all research, all stakeholders, researchers, anybody analyzed it would be working from the same accurate, up-to-date, reliable, comprehensive data set. Instead, it's all being dispersed. It's the database that Eagle currently uses was based on a 2010 database from the company. The company went on and transferred to a new database, but when I got a copy of that new database and compared it with the old, it found some anomalies. Instead of cleaning up the anomalies, the company said, well, if you're actually going to look at the data and compare, we're going to cut you off from the database, and they did. So the state doesn't have access to Gelman's database. So consequently, the state gets monthly summaries from Gelman that we have to pay taxpayer money to have somebody reconstitute the database every month. And it takes Dan forever to do it because he doesn't, the input, it would normally just be a simple import, something we knew how to do last century. But no, it takes time to do that, and then to get it set and then get it posted on the website and it gets sent out. And I hazard a guess that there may be 2 or 3 entities on this screen who actually access the Access database and pull out the spreadsheets that are used to do analysis. If you don't have the data, if everybody doesn't have the comprehensive data, something's going to be missed. The only way we know what's going on underground with with groundwater contamination is from the data. That's the only thing we have. We can't just look down there and say, well, there's the actually in there, there's there. No, we have to get, it takes data to understand that. And there's been a serious lack of respect for data all along on this site. And the lawyers aren't any better than some of the regulators and the staff people. Staff has their own little bailiwicks of data. Here's my data, here's my data. You know, I'm responsible for this. But somehow we need a CARD to be able to pull together those data sets in an accurate and fast and useful way, so we can really understand what's going on here and be able to influence, be able to present that data to the decision makers. And that's just not happening right now. You know, the judge hasn't seen anything like this. Yeah, I'm sure he hasn't. I know, pretty sure he hasn't seen the interactive Rockworks project that Eagle's been working on. Can we please get the data that goes into everybody's decision? So we can say, well, that may be a good decision based on that data, but here's this data over here that you forgot, that you didn't include. I'll give you another example of that. Well, first, before I get off of Elizabeth, I'm going to show you a display of where the Elizabeth wells are located. Because they don't have X and Y, they're located in the middle of the South Atlantic, because that's where that's where 00 X latitude and longitude is. So if there's any of the wells, when you're bringing up this Google Earth mashup, and you say, well, where are these wells that don't have latitude and longitude? Well, if you go over and look under the piano key countries in Africa, that's where they are. They're over here. All these wells that we don't have XY for, it's like they don't really exist in this country. They exist in the South Atlantic because somebody hasn't located where those are. And all the Elizabeth wells, except for one, are there. Yet, Kevin Lund's Rockworks has that data. So now I'm going to show you, I'm going to zip through some of Kevin Lund's expert report. I'm going to turn off the map so you can see just his data. I'm going to turn off residual. I'm going to turn off all the well data. And I'm going to turn off the plume maps. And I'm going to turn on some of his imaging. First of all, it's a Bedrock surface model. So this is Kevin's Bedrock surface model, which is good for as far as it goes. I want to point out that we have here our original prohibition zone and expanded prohibition zone. What this isn't showing is the expanded prohibition zone. his Rockworks Bedrock surface model didn't even include the new prohibition zone. So what's going on up here, we can't really analyze because it wasn't part of the analysis. He did include a larger area for the Bordeaux zone. I don't know how to pronounce that, but this is an area where the water, the groundwater is close to the surface. And of course, we all know about this area over here around West Park, but look at this much bigger area over here around in Scio Township, and even around Third Sister Lake and south. So this is good information to have. It doesn't go far enough north to cover my property or some of this offshoot that goes to the north. The other thing he has is a relief map of the surface. And this generally shows where there are channels for surface water to go. And the thinking is that the tributary flows in these areas might mimic what the groundwater flow is in those areas, which is what we've seen here around Third Sister Lake, and definitely in the Sister Lakes tributary where they're discharging into, and in Allen Creek, that these are the flow arrows of where the dioxin is going. But notice that there's some up here that are going straight to Barton Pond, which Larry Lemke's pointed out. And there's one here that's pretty close to where the plumes are. If it's true for these guys, it might be true for this one. So I went ahead and made arrows so I can superimpose them on different maps. This is the plume map that the Rockworks, Kevin Lund's Rockworks provided. Now, if we minimize that a little bit, you can see there's some arrows going from that. A lot of the arrows are going east, some are going west, but he largely ignored the arrows going north. Like this is really pretty close here. If we look at the 3D model of the plume, these are plume maps from the company. These aren't plume maps that I created. These are Gelman's own plume maps, but extruded up 1 part per billion, 1 meter for each 1 part per billion. This portion here seems to be going north. Gelman's maps show that. This is the area they proposed to treat down to 500 parts per billion. But then below that, maybe not anymore. So where's this heading? Where's the closest tributary to this flow area? I maintain it's this guy right here. If it ends up getting by the handful of monitoring wells we have here, this could end up going into this tributary and affecting scores of township wells that don't have access to city water. I've been saying this over and over again. So here's Scio Township, is most of that area. Ann Arbor Township's portion over here. And here are the properties that have wells or could have wells if they're vacant properties. And similarly for Ann Arbor Township, there's some here. So Ann Arbor Township has to be concerned about what's going straight to Barton Pond from these tributaries. Scio Township has a whole lot more here. Well, there's even Ann Arbor Township in this area too. These wells are going to get hit long before it gets to Barton Pond. And it's already happening. It's happening here at 3550. Elizabeth Road. It already happened over here on the west side in Breezewood. Now, sure, they're single digit, but who's to say over time that those aren't going to be higher? And who's to say over time that Michigan may wise up like other states that value water more and regulate dioxin down to 1 part per billion or less? It used to regulate at 3 parts per billion. We relaxed it to 77 and then 85. Now it jumped back down to 7.2, which just, if anything good happened with the judge thing, is that 7.2 got incorporated. It is going to be the rule now for cleaning up. But should it be 7.2 forever? Should we be concerned about what if it gets half? What if it goes down 3.5 when the EPA comes in? And what if the EPA sets a standard like New York and other places have a 1 part per billion? Are we going to be ready? A possibility. Or are we just going to have to live with more dioxin in our water? Are we going to? Is it going to be a new Flint water crisis for us? That's what I worry about. So this is what I've been working on since I got back. I'm going to turn off the township wells. Nobody else has this, where you can go to one platform and look at various aspects of the cleanup. Dan Hamel will have to have a few more folders and flip through them all to see this kind of information. The judge hasn't seen any of this. I doubt that the lawyers have anything like this. And yet, here we are as ordinary citizens trying to provide information to decision makers and be met with resistance. Even suggesting that maybe this is misinformation. Well, if this is misinformation, who provided it? The company provided it. It kind of looks, if you look at the 2D version, it kind of looks the same as Kevin's Rockworks result. It matches up very well. Now, it's good that he has in here a 4 part per billion boundary. He has 4 part per billion boundary showing in his Rockworks modeling. Again, we'd like to see the data for that. It actually goes out the prohibition zone a couple places at 4 parts per billion, but not to the north except for this little triangle right here. Well, why isn't that triangle? Why isn't there a monitoring well at that triangle? He's showing 4 parts per billion here. Why wasn't this a monitoring location being proposed? If his modeling shows that, because remember where this is going. This is going to that towards that tributary I mentioned earlier. Is it making any sense to anybody? I mean, to me, it's common sense.
Well, Roger, this is Dan. You know, we've been indicating to Eagle for a very long period of time that there is that movement towards Rose Drive along that tributary. So this is kind of just confirming what we've been telling the community and the governments and Eagle for a long, long period of time. And I'm glad that Eagle and Jenny with Washtenaw County are looking in those areas and sampling those areas. And you're right, in the comments that we made to the proposed consent judgment, we did indicate that there should be a monitoring well in that area. Unfortunately, those comments didn't apparently make it into the order. So here we are now having to deal not only with an order that had the positives and negatives, that is the agreed to and disagreed to provisions in it, with us now having to overcome those negative provisions, but also it didn't include the constructive comments that we made as well. So it's kind of like, okay, we can be happy that we have a Superfund designation moving forward, but the fact that this new order is there just complicates all of our work. And as Ralph was indicating, a lot of the work is going to have to be repeated to make sure that everybody understands in these quarterly meetings the problems that we have. And
You're absolutely right.
And these diagrams are very, very helpful.
I also plotted the cross sections map that Kevin used, and then tried to match that up with the cross sections that I already had. These are the ones that Kevin used in his modeling. But there's some holes here. There's some places where here's a cross section here that I don't have. Here's a piece of a cross section I don't have. Here's a big one across here. So here's some cross sections that are that were missed. In fact, I missed one of the ones that was missed even. I'd like to see all these cross sections. Are there some cross sections that were submitted that weren't made public? It's good to have this information because they have different views of what the aquifer layers are like. Here's the ones that I've been able to plot over the years. And of course, I have cross sections from others that the DQ doesn't have. Why don't we have all this information in the repository? Why do we have to beg for it? Why isn't it just there and shared in an organized fashion? Most of these cross sections I had to ferret out of reports, and some of those reports were pretty obscure. They weren't even mentioned in any. You'd have to, dig through the report. Oh, by the way, here's a cross section in this report.
Why can't we have Josh respond to that? Oh, he's got his hand up.
Well, I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows it's a problem.
Good timing. Good timing.
Yeah.
So no, I was going to ask Dan to kind of give an update if he hadn't previously about our plan for this data. I mean, our plan is to make it all available on a GIS platform where all these layers will be available. You can pull all the tables out in Excel format and do whatever you want with them. But Dan might know more detail on it and timing.
Well, yeah. What we're doing now with what Kevin's doing now is working with our GIS group in the state of Michigan. We now have a GIS platform that's outward facing that we are going to put this Gelman data on that GIS platform. He has already had several meetings and has already started working with a GIS group in Eagle, and our subcontractor, Manick & Smith, is who we have been utilizing to help us do the RockWorks modeling. And as far as when that will be, we're hoping sometime this summer to have at least the start of that Gelman on that platform. I believe the GIS, it was since the beginning of the year, they brought out the GIS platform is available to the public. So we're, I don't have an exact date when the Gelman will be placed on that platform. I will keep the CARD group updated as we get closer to that, and I was hoping also to bring some of that information to the CARD meetings where we can have, show you how to get in, what's going to be available. Roger, that's where you're going to be able to, get your tables and files off of that. I'm told off of that platform of what data went into our RockWorks modeling. So you will be able to confirm, what was used to generate the figures and model the geology, hydrogeology, and contaminant present, figures that we generate from that model. We will be updating the data that we receive with any new response activities that are implemented because of this order that the judge says. Example, any new monitoring wells, any new vertical profiling, the geology that's encountered when borings are made or drilled. We will be updating. It's going to be a continuing process to update the RockWorks model and present that information on.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you there, Dan. I'm going to interrupt you. Is there a work plan for this project?
Is there a work plan for what? The GIS?
Your internal GIS project. Is there a work plan?
No, there is not.
Who are the users? Who are the users of this?
Well, it's going to be available outward facing, so the public will.
Yeah, but who are the users? Who are the users going to be? Just staff?
No, as I said, it will be outward facing, so anybody in the public.
Okay, so I would be a user. I would be a user.
Yes, you could be able to gather information.
Right. Do you know how GIS projects get worked on? Do you know how projects like this, you're going to have a product that's going to be an outward facing GIS system. And why have the users, the potential user of this, not been consulted? I did this for 40 years. We would go in, provide systems for local governments, state governments. One of the first things we would do is where are you at now? What information for the users of the system, whoever it is, the public, the staff, what do you have now? What do you need? And we would build that into the system before rolling it out to the public. We won't throw it out in the public and say, well, here, this is it, deal with it. No, we asked the users what they needed, and we would build that in. Have you asked us users what we want to see in a GIS? Who's in charge of this project?
Well, the GIS platform,
I mean, I could
it's Eagle Water.
I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I've worked with local governments all these decades. I understand how staff thinks. This is what we need for staff to be able to make our decisions. They don't necessarily set up systems that would help their constituents understand the problem, because that might mean the constituents might see something that they didn't see, and then they have to deal with it. So I understand that, but systems like this had better show the reality of what's going on so we can make decisions based on reality.
Well,
I'm scolding the Eagle now for not asking the users. They're far along in this system, and they haven't asked us users what should be in the system. That's where I'm at from this.
well, they talk
as a
badly
professional.
about the users in the report, and he gets the incorrect east and west and makes.
Yeah, Beth, let's
horrible
not talk about that now.
Well-
Beth, we know all that, Beth. The problem is that we're part of this. Everybody is working together on this. Suppose we should be working together on this. And when you have entities that keep things secret, that go off on their own and present something and say this is the way it's going to be, without consulting the end users, the users of that information. This is no way to run government. I mean, it's authoritarian, and it's not the way. It's not democratic republic. I'm sorry. This is government of the people, by the people, for the people. We need to show it. You know, otherwise we're going to have problems. Anyway, go ahead, Dan. You're free to respond. I know you can't, but go ahead.
Roger, the GIS platform is a EGLE statewide platform. So how things are generated, you know, we're following the state, you know, guidance that we get internally from our GIS people, DTMB, what the state requirements requires. So I don't have anything more than that to add.
Thank you, Dan.
Kathy Knoll?
Josh, you want to weigh in on that?
Can I go ahead?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. This is really a question for Eagle. Dan, Josh, Brian, I don't know who's going to answer this, but under the terms of the order that is soon to be entered, Gelman is to immediately implement the activities described in the fourth amended CJ. I want to know, what are the plans from Eagle to enforce these terms in the order? Any of you?
Well, I think as far as implementing investigation activities, Gelman has to submit work plans related to those activities, and we have a time frame to review those. And as far as that will also identify a schedule in there, as my understanding, a schedule for implementation. We will review that and comment on that. I'm not quite understanding what your question is. What will
Okay, let me explain a little more, because specifically with the activities that were described for Scio in terms of the phytoremediation and the other activities on site, okay, that might involve trees and plants. And we're approaching summer now. I'm just wondering, what's the time frame? And how long will it take you to review the work plan? When is the work plan expected?
I can't answer that. That's kind of was a little bit of some of the questions that have been left with just implementing the order. There are multiple response activities on site, off site, to the east and to the west. The order that those are implemented is one of the things that we will be discussing with Gelman when that order is signed, and said, okay, what do we start with first? I can tell you that it will be very difficult, or we would to try to implement all the different, all at the same time. There's going to be an order of implementation of response activities. We can do multiple response activities in different locations potentially, but doing them, what do we want first? We're going to want to prioritize what information we want to gather first, and what activities what of those response activities we want implemented first. And there's going to be a, for example, in monitoring well installation, they're going to have to start it. They're going to have to get access. They're going to have to get any permits along right of ways, those types of things. So we're going to prioritize what should be started first to keep things moving forward as quickly as possible. On site, again, your concern of, okay, you have this phytoremediation. Well, hey, the summer isn't the best time to start planning. So those types of evaluations will be considered in the prioritization of what activities are done first. At least that's what we have been talking about in-house that way.
Kathy Griswold, you have your hand up? Or
Yes, I think we need to look at how we were successful with getting the letter to the EPA. And that was with tremendous political pressure at all levels. It's clear that we don't have control of the legal team. It's clear that we have many challenges ahead of us. And I think that we need to start planning now and being strategic. One of the things that is a challenge for some, but could be an opportunity for us, is that the AG and the governor are going to be facing very competitive races in 2022. And while good Democrats are not going to go out and vote for a Republican, good Democrats who are not happy with the direction that this project has taken may just stay home and not vote. So I think that we need to make it very clear that we expect support from our governor and from our AG to move this project along, and to get the work done. At the same time, no one that I've talked to thinks that a permit is going to be issued for First Sister Lake. So while we want to get work started now, we also want to prepare for the June 1st hearing so that we can be much more articulate and concise with what we want and make sure that our attorneys are conveying that, because that's, as people have said already, the attorneys are not following the advice of the local elected officials, and definitely not the community members.
Yeah.
Anyway,
September 1st.
September 1st.
There are opportunities for us to get better control of this project.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you said June
1st,
but you meant September 1st, right? Just
Absolutely, but I do want to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we should have done it by June 1st, right?
Yeah.
As it turns out. Anyway, all right, we're at the end of the meeting. Anybody else got any last minute comments?
Best wishes to Debbie Dingle. Hope she recovers quickly, and ask for help if you need it.
Josh and Dan, there's no excuse that we can't get the data that was used in Kevin Lund's report, and there was sent. What were the consultants? What was the inputs for the consultants' work on that, and what it ended up in the Rockworks modeling? You could just those two sets of data, what went in and what's in there now, that's easily exported and shared with CARD. So please make that happen forthwith. Don't wait for it to be gone through the GIS and we have to then download it piecemeal. We want to see the raw data that went in. We want to see the results that's in the modeling that came out. You know, we want the data that's actually in the model after being massaged and filtered and everything. I want to check that process out, because if there's problems with it, you're going to want to know sooner rather than later. You don't want to have to go back and go to the GIS people and say, oh, by the way, that data we gave, here's some other pieces to it that we need to put in. It's better to take care of that sooner rather than later to have a more complete picture. So that's my third rant of the day, or fourth rant, maybe, if anybody's counting. All right. Any last minute things, or Beth? Anyone else? No. Okay. Well, thanks everybody again. Nice seeing some new people on the screen, although you might not turn on your camera. We appreciate having you around. Have a good month, everyone.
Thank you, Roger and Beth.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Well, thanks for organizing, Roger and Beth.
Thanks to all.
We're ended.
To all.
All right. Watching everybody go away. You can always tell the people that aren't really listening because they state that, you know, they're still on the screen at the end. Which means they walked away from their desk. Or if they're on my phone, they can't, they don't know how to hang up. So bye, everyone.